and we are here with the illustrious John de Lancie. Thank you for joining us, Mr. de Lancie.
You're quite welcome.
And you played the character Discord in My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and you're back for season 3. How wonderful was that?
Was or is?
Well, is. It's great to see you again. I mean,
Yes.
everyone loved Discord in season 2, the premiere, the great and powerful Discord coming in and just messing with everything, and then we get to see him redeemed, coming back and redeeming himself. So how was it like coming back to the show and being able to see that character go through such a change and being in that character, seeing that transition?
I'm not perhaps quite as involved with it as you
okay.
are. So I don't have those type of, for me, where the rubber meets the road is actually going into the studio and doing it, or reading the script the night before. Redeemed, though, is an unfortunate, perhaps, turn. I don't think that Discord should ever be redeemed.
No, not entirely.
No. So let's hope that he doesn't get
right.
totally.
He's still
redeemed.
got to be Discord.
That's right.
He might be a little bit nicer now, but he's still Discord.
Yes, right. For the moment, nicer, right.
And so, and you also, in addition to being the character Discord, you have created the Brony documentary, the BronyCon documentary, and that is out. It is released. And what's the reception been to it so far?
Well, the reception has been, for the people that we made it for, the reception has been really terrific. For the people who contributed to the Kickstarter, the vast majority of them understood what the point of the documentary was about, and are very receptive. For the people then who are the larger audience, which is really to understand that this is a documentary that was not made for bronies. It was made for people who have a negative idea about who bronies are. And for those people, it's been really well received.
Changed people's minds.
Changed people's minds, which was the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise was not to create some sort of little, esoteric explorations of bronyhood in sort of the darker reaches of it.
We know who we are. We need to show who
you got it, and that was what the point of it was. And for those people, and a number of them have actually come to my house to see the show. So I'll have screenings every once in a while, which comes with a complimentary dinner. Those people who are just professionals, they're doctors and lawyers and are a couple of architects and what have you, who had actually no concept of who bronies were.
Do they come in with a negative attitude?
Well, yes, because in a way I'll set them up. I'll say, so it's going to be a thing about bronies. Yeah. Well, John, I know you've been working on this. What are bronies? What's a brony? A brownie? No, a brony. Okay. A brony is a 20-year. So, and I enjoy the setup. A brony is a 20-year-old guy who watches a cartoon intended for 10-year-old girls. And you can see their minds going, oh, like that. I said, so now let's go downstairs and take a look at the film. And afterwards, at dinner time, the last group that was there, one woman said, a doctor, said, after you said that, and I have to say in the first few minutes of the film, I found it the whole notion sort of repugnant. By the time I finished the film, I was really, not only did I like all of the people who I saw, and I was so impressed, but I really had a journey in myself, who I consider myself to be a rather open, tolerant, progressive, smart person. I really it had allowed me to kind of examine myself and my own view of the world and how it works. So she said, for me, this was, it sounds a little overspeak, but exaggerated, a life-changing event for me to have watched this.
And it's good for the individual who's watching it as well as for the community. That's an interesting perspective.
And that's an experience that I've had now. Let's see now, how many people? I'd say 10 or 12 people have seen it I mean, of my friends.
Right,
And
screenings and
3 or 4 of them have said the same thing, that there was a push and pull and push and pull. They're like, yes, yes, yes. I'm like, no, 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 let me look again. And I'm like, oh, yes. And so you've pulled me further and further away from my own staid notions of about what humanity does and needs, and how people interact and all those type of
Well,
things.
what an extraordinary, I don't know if this is the right word, but an extraordinary gift to the Brony community that you're able to deliver this message to the world, because this is the biggest problem facing the Brony community, is the hate or the negative perception to people who are not in the know. And so getting people in the know and educating them about this is the best thing for the Brony community to have.
One of the things we kept in mind, Mike and I kept in mind, a couple of major, when you create something, you have to have an audience in mind. You know, a face that says something, and then another face that represents something else. One of the faces that I had in mind was an email that we got saying, is this a documentary that I'm going to be able to show my parents? Okay. That was an ongoing theme that we had. Also, is this something that I want to make sure that I take you through the journey that actually I went through.
Right.
Okay. That everybody who, when you say, 20-year-old guys are watching,
Right, you spoke to that in the past.
and they kind of, their eyes kind of go, I want them to go through that journey, so that we have this big obstacle there, because right off the bat, most people will go, well, these are just a bunch of perverts, and then you go, let me take you by the hand through this experience, and let's see where you end up at the end. And like that kid's father, he goes, sort of begrudgingly a little bit, but yeah, I guess I'll watch it. But he was so there was the kid who, or whoever he was, who said, I'm going to be able to show my parents. There was the parent at large. There was the general society at large. There were the people like the Howard Sterns and the Fox Newses, and people who actually was saying, well, I'm not quite sure whether my son being a brony or a terrorist. I'm not. And you kind of go, well, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind, and you need to be educated and in a reasonable sort of way, and hopefully at the end of it you'll come out of it and going, well, okay, it's not the show that I would watch. And frankly, it's not the show that I would watch. But I don't watch much of anything. But I applaud the people who do, and mostly who take such good things out of it and apply that in their daily lives. And that is really unusual. And so that's what we were trying to celebrate.
Well, it's such a wonderful individual journey and an enlightening journey, and we actually have a bit of a press conference going on here. We have a lot of different
Hey
people.
guys!
So hello, I think that we'll just go. Is there a particular order we're going to go, or why don't we just
Sing out,
and if you want to ask a question, and we'll repeat it out here.
Well, how about, what kind of roles would you like to take in your animated career? Like, would you like to be the villain again? Would you like to be a teacher, the protagonist, the side character, main character?
So what kind of roles in your future of your animation voiceover career you're looking forward to doing?
I don't look for roles, because the fact of the matter is that people call me and they have something. So it isn't as if you go out and you say, I'm only interested in roles that have to do with teachers or something like that. At that point, nobody calls.
I think you'd be a great teacher.
Yeah. So the most that I can really do is to say yes or no. And at that point, the first thing I do is I say, well, let me see the material. Yeah. I did when video games were first coming out, I made the mistake. I just got hired. It was just come into it, and I didn't read the material. It's so, they're so big, and they're mostly, one-liners like, get out of the way, or ridiculous stuff like that. So I'm there, and it's about I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into me recording, and then all of a sudden I went, wait a minute now. I'm in a car and I'm shooting somebody in another car? He goes, yeah. I said, well, this is like a drive-by shooting. Yeah. I was horrified. I knew that I couldn't pull out because, hey, I had said I was going to do it. But I learned my lesson at that point. I went, read it all. I have to read it before.
It's hard to surprise people in a drive-by situation when you're in a visual situation. They put you in the car. You can tell that's coming.
Well, I mean, it was just it's so contrary to what I think is what we need as a society is video games about shooting people and about, drive-by shooting.
Less drive-bys, more bronies.
Yeah,
There
you got it. Okay, next. Yes.
J-Marco Celestia Radio. I had some questions about, in regards to the BronyCon documentary, some of the people that might have had a few, disagreements or whatever about the documentary, some of that has been attributed in part to some of the expenses that were laid out afterwards and how much was being charged to have actual copies of the material. A lot of people thought, that it should be, free and prolific, and that's where some of the issues came with some of the pirating problems. My question is, do you guys think that at any point that there will be a release of what the expenses, what they have gone to in order to make the documentary what it is, in order to try and quell some of that?
Okay, so how do you want to term that?
Well, he's wanting to ask, will the financial records of the Bernadotte Con documentary going to be released at any time?
No. Our obligation is to the people who contributed to the Kickstarter. Our obligations are to nobody else. We did things in that documentary which are sort of unheard of in your favor, which is to say that we used all of the money to put up onto the screen. Our model was such that, in retrospect, it was perhaps the wrong model. It was a model that has been the classic film model that's been going on for years and years. When we asked for $60,000, we had already pre-planned that it would be 2 cameras at a 2-day event, which would then require 6, perhaps 8 weeks of work. And we were comfortable with that. It's not a big commitment on our part, and it's one that seemed all very, very doable. When we got $322,000,
and you weren't asking for $300,000,
and we were not asking for that, we were both delighted but a little horrified because now we felt an enormous obligation to make sure that we used that money wisely and used all of that money that way. But we were now into a film that had gone from sort of a quasi-amateurish type thing into a full network film with all of the attendance things that go into that. That is, when you go from 2 cameras to 6 cameras, you go from 50 hours to 450 hours.
You're not just tripling the content, you're more than tripling.
That's right. You have then not just 1 editor, you have 4 editors. You have machinery, equipment that has to, you just have a lot of equipment now that you have to buy. It isn't the type of thing that one can sort of do. And I know that the general public has come to this sort of prosumer kind of, I have whatever.
You have to beat the thing that you can buy at Best Buy.
Yeah, that's right. But we have to do it at a pro level. I mean, not a prosumer level, but at actually a pro level. Also, we began to then say, well, how will we, think of this? And that is that 2 cameras, 2 days, which was the inner circle, then began to move out because we had to figure out how to use the money wisely and just increase the scope of the show. Well, that means, in this case, going to Israel. It means going to Germany, going to these places. It's actually cheaper to send our people there than to use internal crews that are there. But we're just adding more and more footage and more time. Then, I'm sort of skipping around here, but then I can't tell you the amount of effort and costs involved in attorneys to make sure that it's truly a fair use film, truly fair use, which is fair to Hasbro, fair to the people, but oh my God, the amount of times that has to go through and be looked at by attorneys, and then pull this out and then re-edit it this way and do it the monies that it took just to find out that, guess what, there's been no other major Brony film.
Right.
Well, whatever, $2,700 to find out like what we already know. I mean, you kind of go, enough already. But
if you hadn't done that, then the movie doesn't.
Exactly. And then just things that I didn't know about. I mean, I sort of knew, kind of, but all of this footage, and then all of it has to go through 2 weeks of color correction, and 2 weeks of whatever, of audio, and on and on and on. We delivered in spades what we said we were going to deliver. A film that was respectful, insightful, and entertaining. Anybody in the business who is where it first was looked at would look at this and they went, wow, man, there's a lot of production up there. Because in the normal world, what would have happened is that $322,000, you would have a studio, or not a studio, but a network. A network would say, we will license a Brony thing, and we will give you $322,000. The company would then take, I don't know, a quarter, a third off the top, and pay the company for all of how, the producers and all that, however they want to organize that.
Because these are the people that are making that production.
That's right. And then what would actually go up on the screen would be $222,000, not $322,000. Mike and I made a choice, which is ultimately perhaps not, knowing what we know now, was perhaps not the best choice. We simply said, that's one of the things that we've sort of, the way, a third off the top or what have you, we can't do that. We want to make sure that we put all of the monies on the screen, as much as it takes to put up on the screen. We need to do that.
So I think in full circle to the question, and what you're saying is 100% of the production monies that were brought in were used on production. They were used on production, on
salaries, all the below the line people, everybody who was professionally hired to do got paid. And there were 6 people who what you normally do is that the writer gets a percentage of the back end, the director gets a percentage of the back end, and in this case, Lauren, who we brought into the project, and we gave her a percentage when we said, and it was really important because as far as I'm concerned, this is Lauren's show. She created this show, and I wanted everything to go through her to make sure that we were getting it right. But that means access. She's on another show. She has a lot of work to do. So you have to say, Lauren, we're going to give you a piece of the show, but that means we need to be able to give you a call. Tara, same thing. And then Mike and I. Mike is really the person who has done the vast majority of the work. The vast majority of the work. He has become a one-man production company for this. So the notion is that we would give this to the people who paid for it, and we would sell it to the people who hadn't with the notion that from that sale, those other 6 people would be taken care of. Mostly, I wanted to make sure that Mike was taken care of, the writer and the director, you know, what have you. I'm not so concerned about myself, and I'm sure that, frankly, Lauren and Tara are not quite as concerned because we're in a different category. When we sent it out, as we had always wanted to do, to the people who had contributed, to discover within, I don't know, a half an hour that it was simply all around the world, all of a sudden we saw our model crash. And it was unfortunate and sort of hurtful, because we went, this is not going to be, we're not going to be able to recover on this. For those who think that it's free, if you didn't pay for it, it's not free. You know, I understand that, you know, and listen, I pirate stuff too. Okay? I understand that. And sometimes one can justify, you go, well, it's a big company, and it's, you know, or this is, you know, but in our case, we only have one product,
right,
which is this.
Right.
So, and you know who the people are. You know it's Mike and Nat and Laurent and John and Tara and Laura. Those are the people who you're affecting.
Right.
So that's where we are about it. I don't need to prove to anybody that we spent the money properly. Nor do I need to justify to people who were, you know, carrying on. I mean, we got sometimes such ridiculous stuff that I don't even read anymore, because it doesn't matter to me. The film is done. It's done. We like it. And the people who we really wanted to like it, like it. To engage in discussions about how dare we not include a segment on clopping is absurd, and more to the point, actually works against you.
Well, it's interesting you say that it was meant for the people who know nothing about bronies, and it was meant to be a positive thing. So, you know, almost that runs contrary to the point.
It totally contrary to the point. I mean, it's even gotten to the point is that, you know, now that every once in a while, you know, a reviewer will see it. These reviewers don't know squat about bronies, so they will watch the film. But because they are also looking for heat, they will go onto the websites, and they will look at all of the, you know, the trash talk, and then they'll put it on. And what's the irony is that nobody's questioning me in terms of what my lifestyle is, but the whole notion of the film was to shed some good light on your lifestyle. So if this reviewer is then taking all of the trash talk and putting it into the review, it completely nullifies the point of the film. So in a way, some of the community out there is literally shooting themselves in the foot. Do I care? No, because I'm going to move on to another project. But there you have it. So I would say that for those of you who are really concerned about the image of your community, you have a film that is a good primer, a good start-off point for people who, in months or years to come, want to do another documentary and make sure that it's, it includes all of the whatever they want on it. That's fine too. I don't care.
Right. I think we have another question going. Yeah.
Silverman with FOB Equestria, sir. I was wondering, with the explosive rise of the MLP fandom, do you go to more Brony conventions or Star Trek conventions? And a second question to that is, how many similarities do you see between the two fandoms? I remember a couple years ago how Star Trek fans was kind of looked down on a little bit. They're all nerds that live in their parents' basement. And the next generation kind of brought them out into the mainstream a little bit, just like this Brony documentary is helping to bring out the mainstream a little bit.
Got a question from our military bronies at FOB Equestria saying, do you go to more other conventions or Star Trek conventions versus Brony conventions? And the comparison between Star Trek and My Little Pony and the fandom.
This is my second Brony convention. First one was Bernadotte Con almost a year ago, or whatever it was. The similarities are, there are a lot of similarities between the two fandoms. And one of the reasons in which I was convinced about doing the film is that while Mike came up with the idea and he said, well, let's do a film, my first response was no. And no, not because I had any particular point of view about bronies, but because I went, oh, I've only done a voiceover on one. Why would I all of a sudden become an expert on bronies or My Little Pony or what have you? It was when I met the general brony population, and when when Mike sent me some really unpleasant media things about them, that I said to myself, I wasn't in on the beginning of Star Trek. I was in on the beginning of The Next Generation. But those beginning fans of Star Trek, classic Trek, they had to brave all of this sort of ridicule about being, really nerdy and, something's a little weird and stuff like that. And I saw that this group was going through the same thing, and actually I was now at the beginning of it, whether I was in a year into it or whatever, 8 months into it, I was sort of at the beginning of it. And because I feel strongly about the fact that we all need to get along in a way and make things work, okay, rather than the proliferation of really negative and sometimes really vile stuff that especially the internet loves doing, that I thought I was going to help this process along. I wasn't going to live in the process. I was just going to help it along for a while. Well, I thought at first it was going to take 2 months. It turned out 10 months, and maybe I'll be involved even longer. But so that's the reason I did it. And there are a lot of similarities, and I hope that this sort of pushes it along.
And go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Howdy, Silver Eagle from Ponyville Live. I had a question. You filled a variety of different roles in a number of ranges. You're on Star Trek, but you're also on like Breaking Bad recently, and that was a uniformly praised role. Would you say that this role with cartoon horses is ironically your most controversial involvement in a fan community? And would you say that the controversy you've endured so far has been, in the big picture, worth it?
So he's been in a lot of characters.
It's a really interesting question.
And, he's been in a lot of characters, a lot of big shows. And is Discord your most controversial role?
Well, it would seem perhaps that it's. I mean, the community, the world view outside of the community, they don't know. My theatrical agents don't even know what My Little
Right. Well,
Pony
you're not
is.
on the screen. It's just your voice.
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't. So in this world, it has a lot of. There's a lot of vibration. But this is a tiny, tiny little world, and so it's not something that has made much impression on, my career at large, as it were. Nor, although I have been involved in a number of what would be considered breakout roles. The role that's you come in, it's supposed to be a day or a week and what have you, and that's the end of it. And I've been fortunate enough by the writing, by my acting in it, and by the reception of the fans to have it turn into a big deal. And that seems to be the case here, which is great.
Yeah, it's not even a regular character. It's a big character with only 3 episodes so far.
Right.
But it's such a huge character, and
Right.
so there's been a lot of welcome reception to
Yeah,
it. So.
yeah.
Yes.
We are Borg from Ponyville Live. Given the chance, would you do it all again?
Would you do it all again? Everything.
Would you do
Do what all again?
a documentary?
The Bernadotte Con documentary.
Oh, yes. I believe that there are, in a way, kind of 2 sets of bronies. At least the way it seems to be working out for me right now to understand. They're the guys in which I meet here, and the girls, who I meet, you know, in a concentrated way here. I find them to be really intelligent, really polite, really engaging. I had a great conversation at the table last night, at the dinner table. Nick, who we hired specifically to be on our production team because he is a brony, and he came to my house in the first day to drop off some hard drives for me to start looking through stuff and what have you. And I said to him, how long are you going to be with us, Nick? And he said, well, Mr. Brokoff thinks that it'll be, you know, maybe as much as 5 days. I said, well, Nick, I'll tell you something. If you do a good job, you're going to have this job for at least 2 to 3 months. Really? Well, this is 9 months later. He's terrific, and he's I mean, he's such a good example for me of what the brony community is and does, and
the passion and the love of both the show and what the bronies themselves, the love of the bronies themselves.
That's right, and also making things work. If there's a problem, let's make it work. Let's fix it. Let's get together. So all of those things have made it for me to say that I would do it again.
I think we have time for one more question. Do we have anybody that we didn't get to yet? So go ahead.
I just got one quick question for you. I think going into this documentary, how many of your people working on it actually knew about the show or had watched it beforehand, and then after the process was over, how many got converted?
How many bronies-
Converted? You want to call it conversion?
How many were
The question was how many in the work on the BronyCon documentary knew about the show beforehand, and how many became fans of the show afterwards?
Nobody knew about it beforehand, okay? And all of them, to a person, all of them were really impressed by the experience. I had some friends who, you know, when you do something, you especially as quickly, you sort of end up hiring your friends. You don't hire people you don't know. You hire people you do know. So at the Brony convention, when we had 6 camera crews there, the 6 main people were all people that we knew, and these are sort of, dare I say, kind of hard-boiled, you know, camera guys that go in, shoot the thing. And they all were talking afterwards going, this is an amazing group. My God, this is an amazing group. So that was one of the things in the documentary that I was particularly concerned about, which was to be able to capture that enthusiasm. You saw a great deal of enthusiasm in that, and enthusiasm is very hard to capture on film. Energy. So whether they all have, whether they all go and watch My Little Pony every day, I can't tell you. But I know that they walked out of the experience with a really positive outlook.
Well, I think anyone who watches the documentary who hadn't known anything about bronies has to walk away from positive. And we love the gift that you've given us to allow us to share the passion and love that this community, because we all, like you said, we all want to get along, and we all want to live in a world where we can accept one another for liking ponies or liking Breaking Bad or liking Star Trek or however. But thank you very much for doing this, Mr. Lancie. This has been a wonderful day. And if you have one last thing to say to the community, we thank you so much. If there's anything you'd like to say.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
And we do you still believe in us? Are you still with us?
Yes, absolutely.
So
that hasn't changed in any way whatsoever.
Good. Well,
Yeah,
thank you very
right.
much, Mr. Lancie. We
Right.
believe in you, and thank you for believing in us.